Melanie Studer is my next guest. Melanie is a co-host of Next Phase Parenting Summit and founder of Parenting High Schoolers, where she shares ideas for parents of teens, self-care for moms, resources, insights, and inspiration for you as you travel this road called life. She's a wife, mom of 3 great kids in their teens and early 20s, educator, speaker, and parenting mentor. Join us as we talk about raising teens. Thank you, Mel, for joining us today. I'm so excited about what you're going to share. This is going to be great.
Thanks. I'm so excited to be here.
Tell me more about parent-teen relationships. I know that it's pretty typical, especially here in the US, to have that relationship not be that great. When, as a parent, when you're thinking into the future, you want to have a great relationship with your teen now so that as an adult or as they become young adults and older adults, that relationship is fostered. So what are you seeing as a mentor to families? What's going on? What are you seeing?
Well, I think there's a couple reasons for the fact that people are struggling with, and including myself. You probably had struggles. I mean, there are just times when you do struggle because teenagers they're just moody people. But here's the thing. If you are a listener, if you're a parent that has a preteen or a elementary, my advice to you would be to start now, to foster connections, to have ongoing, scheduled, intentional conversations. We wrapped it around like grade time, like every 6 weeks, whether they had good or bad grades, whether things were going well or not, just sort of, we touch base about their grades. What could we do to improve them? Or, hey, you're doing great. So what else could we be doing? What sport was next in the season? Just those kinds of things. So, but I will say that the reason that a lot of what I do now as a blogger and an author and a speaker was what happened. We felt like, we've got this, they are pretty good kids, we're doing, hey, let's pat ourselves on the back. And we had done fine. No, we'd had our ups and downs. But when our oldest son turned 14, it was like this evil creature emerged, and I wouldn't go so far as say evil, but this person Sam became someone not Sam. And I think by us just assuming things were going well and not continuing those purposeful and intentional conversations with him, he started floundering. And so we were backpedaling and trying to think, okay, how can we, we got to fix this. He's not a terrible beast. And, we need to help him figure that out as well. So we sort of went back and thought, okay, well, let's reconnect with these conversations. And we just started talking to, I am a huge fan of mentor moms. I always am asking someone that has older kids, even way older, like, okay, did you ever have this happen? Like, what did you do? So I'm a questioner and a researcher. And so that's where my blog came from. And that's where our connection with Sam was reestablished. It took a while. And that's another thing. I think if you're a parent of a teen, especially like that 13, 14-year-old, and you're listening to this now, it's a struggle, whether things have been good or possibly they were not good when they were younger. So baby steps. I think a lot of times when we realize there is a problem, that we want it to be fixed immediately. I mean, that's me. I'm like, okay, what can we do? Let's do it. But, it took a while to get this way. So it's going to take a while to get this way.
Yeah.
So I think patience and respecting our kids, even though they may have turned into this person that we're not really familiar with and that we're not really crazy about at this moment, to know that they are struggling as well. And that it's up to us. We're the parents. We need to throw them the rope. We need to create that link to help them get back on board with where we want them to be or where we had hoped they would be by now. And it's going to take time.
Yeah.
But I think, and I also think a lot of people think, oh, teenagers, they're horrible. Well, that's feeding into a situation that does not have to be. It does not have to be. I mean, there are going to be bad days. Don't get me wrong. And we still have them. I still have a teenager in my house, but in general, if you are intentional and purposeful and you really schedule conversations, even just 5-minute ones, just to check in, I think that goes a long way for our kids to know, that they're important to us and that we really do care. And that's what they need to see and hear from us.
I think that's the biggest priority right there, is that we're not 100% 24/7 with our kids. That's the bottom line. I don't care if your kids are in traditional school or if they're homeschooled like mine were, or if they're in college, even living at home in college, you don't have 100% knowledge of what's going on in their life, who they're interacting with, what those conversations are like, or how they're perceiving those conversations and those interactions, because all of that can be very different from the reality that is. I know, we take things that people say to us the wrong way sometimes, or God help you, on your cell phone with likes or tags or whatever, people just, they're getting their who they are, their validation from other people. And that shouldn't be. The people who care the most about your teens are you. Family.
100%.
Family are the ones who care the most. You and I talked earlier that, what do you do about the child that is holed up in their room, right? And they're not communicating, right? When my daughter, who's the oldest one, left for college, I suddenly realized that my son was up in his room. He had never been there. He'd never done that before, because he had his sister. They were inseparable. They were best friends. They'll tell you now, as adults, they were best friends, even growing up. So we had to realize that something had to change. We had to make some changes within our home and in our communication so that wasn't where he stayed. Is it fine to be in your room now and then? Sure, but it shouldn't be where you want to be. You shouldn't want to be alone all the time, because life isn't alone. Life is communicating with others.
Right. So as an aside to that, I have a YouTube video, and one of my videos is about that. And, it is natural for our teens to start to pull away and to need alone time. But my two sort of caveats to that are basically, number one, that time needs to be limited. Like you just mentioned, it cannot and should not be all day. We would not let our husband or wife or other children or whoever live in their room. So there's no reason for a teenager to, but yes, so they come home, they need to decompress. They need an hour or so to just, maybe take a snack and just chill. But my other thing about that is, besides limiting it, is if they want to be alone and they're wanting to decompress and they're wanting just to be, then they don't need a device in that room. They don't need an iPad. They don't need a phone. They don't need their computer. Maybe, you could put an Echo Dot in there where they can have a little music. But, that was sort of our thing. And after their hour or whatever. Now, if you're at a place where they're in there 9 hours or whatever, they come in and they're there till they go to bed, like that, that's not okay. It wouldn't have been okay in my house. So start, and this is where you've got to do those baby steps. So you know what, we're going to reduce it down. I would like to get it to 1 hour on school days, and maybe on weekends, maybe a couple hours. I mean, I think that's okay. There needs to be give and take, and they need to see that you're willing to work with them. That's the other thing is, if we are wanting them to respect us, we need to kind of respect them, and they do need that privacy. But so work your way to where it is reasonable in your mind. Your time limit might be different than mine, but there needs to be a limit. And really go open that, just say, I'm going to knock then I'm going to open the door at whatever time you have said. And my kids were still allowed to kind of stay in there, but the door had to be open, and then they had to come out fairly soon because there were things that needed to be done. Maybe there were chores or homework, or, they had a paper route or a practice or whatever it was. So, and it's just not healthy. They can't, when they're alone that long, it's too long with their own thoughts. I'm not good with my own thoughts for that long. And they don't know how to handle that. That's, we're still struggling with that. Like with COVID and everything, like I totally am an introvert. And so I love just being in my home, but I have adapted, and I know the things that are comforting to me, but they have not figured those things out yet. They're in that process. But no, I totally,
Yeah,
that is,
absolutely.
it's a natural thing, but it needs to be limited.
Yeah, 100%. You know, I think communication is probably the most difficult skill that parents need to learn with their kids. And as you mentioned, the earlier the better. Definitely the earlier the better, because it's not just, well, tell me about your day, which is awesome if they'll tell you about their day.
Yeah.
But, coming at that out of the blue, they're like, excuse me, right? I mean, it can be a little harsh. So it may be that you need to address the elephant in the room. Johnny, I'm seeing that we're not really communicating well, or that I really don't know what's going on in your life and I really want to be part of it. And address it, come at it from a perspective of, you're becoming an adult. I want to help you get there the right way. And I want our relationship to be fostered so that when you are out on your own, you still feel comfortable checking in with me and seeing how I'm doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it is an opportunity for mutual respect. I think I got lucky with my kids because early in my parenting, another person such as yourself was teaching a parenting course. And within that parenting course, one of the things that I will never forget was teaching your kids to make choices, to make the right choices, and giving them, offering choices for a lot of things that
Mm-hmm.
are okay with you as a parent.
Right.
And when you teach them to make the right choices, when you offer choices, it gets their brains figuring out how to discern, how to make the right decisions for themselves as they grow up. One of the things that occurred later in life with my now adult children, they will call. There's a problem. And all I have to do is listen, and they will talk and talk and talk and talk, and they will talk themselves into whatever the solution is for them. I don't have to say a word. I was just there.
Right.
And that's the goal. The goal is to have them be able to make decisions, to be, healthy adults where they can see and they can cut it off at the root, negative thoughts that are going to impact their life negatively. And
Right.
teenagers are the worst at that. It's hormones. Sorry. Their bodies are changing. They don't know what's going on, but these things affect their gut microbiome. It affects their brain chemistry. And they're just not well equipped. There are things in their body that have not been developed well enough to make those decisions on their own. That's why they need to be, like you said, with the family, right?
Yeah.
Family that wants to be with them, that enjoys the conversation with them, that's asking about how their day went, and how, conversations with their friends. Well, okay, you went to soccer today. That's awesome. Tell me about it.
Right.
You know?
Or, and a lot of times it's much easier to get an answer from your teen if a couple things. First, you have to listen more than you talk, like you just mentioned, and ask open-ended questions, and don't expect an immediate answer. Let them think about, like, that's something I struggle with is I'm pretty good at open-ended questions as I've been in the classroom for, 20 plus years. But what I struggle with is waiting for the answer, not like just assuming I know it or prompting them, if I am truly curious and respecting what they have to say, I have to let them say it. My oldest boy is probably my most verbal, so I never really had to prompt him, but my youngest is my quietest. And sometimes he'll just look at me and he'll go, Mom, you just answer my question for me. And I can see that he's frustrated and he's not happy with me. And here's the other thing is, as parents, we need to be willing to say we're sorry,
Mhm.
and own it. I say I'm sorry all the time. I'm pretty snappy, my tone is not the best a lot of times, and I've really been working on it. Well, I've had a teenager in my house for 14 years, and I've got a few more years to go. And it's so hard not to just react back. And I find myself still, after all these years of being an adult and being a mom, and I snap and I'm like, and I just immediately, I'm pretty good now. I didn't used to be, but I'll just say, you know what? I'm going to take a breath. I'm really sorry. What did you want to say, or whatever the case is? And I think we need there's so many things that we need to be willing to do like that. And just to model like how relationships and conversations need to look,
Mhm.
because they're not going to get great advice in that from school or friends.
No,
There's too many other things going on.
it is a learning process for everyone. And not every technique or strategy works for every child. So you may have to try different things, you know.
Well,
There's just
right.
a
And
lot of opportunities. Yeah,
right. And sometimes the technique that works with child A today is not even going to work tomorrow. It's like
true.
you're just juggling, like you're juggling your kids and your techniques, and just try to, I think something that moms forget to do too is to refresh yourself, to take time out to, like, every morning and I am absolutely not a morning person, but this is how I have survived, is I get up an hour before my kids, and I have my coffee and I have my quiet time. And I even a lot of times have time to sort of have gone through my emails. Like I have a sense of accomplishment before anyone enters my kitchen. I've grounded myself. And I think if you're jumping out of bed and you're rushing around, and at least for me, it just does not start my day off in a place where I am at peace. And that is so important. Now, there are times like when in the past, like the kids were sick or, things happen, but in general, if I can make it happen. And I think for each of us, we need to find out if morning's not your thing, then maybe after they go to bed or right when they leave for school, there's got to be even 15 minutes is so key to our mental health. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
moms have a tendency to ignore it because you're used to taking care of everyone else. It's become way more important to me in the last probably 3 or 4 years. And I have really benefited, I think, from it. And I think we all can.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that that's one of the things that, especially moms or whoever the caregiver is at home, it is difficult to balance the time because you are busy all of the time trying to get
Yeah.
everything done, get everybody on track. And, especially if you have, more than just a couple of kids, it becomes harder with every child. And if you're working, it's a thing. There's a lot of moving parts, but you have to add in there that moving part that says, I need time for me, just a little. And it
Just a
can be
little.
just drinking your tea or your coffee. My mother polishing her nails.
Oh, I
That's
love
what she
that.
did. That was her zen. That was what she did for herself. And
Yeah.
that's awesome. Now, that did not translate to me.
Well, everyone's different, and that worked for her. And I think as long as you're searching for whatever it is and you're making time for yourself, and maybe it's going to evolve. Like maybe, what I'm doing now in another year is going to look different. And I think
Mhm.
we need to give ourselves the freedom to take care of ourselves so that we can take care of everyone else, because that is our job. And I mean, I wouldn't trade it for the world, but I know I am better at my job and I enjoy it so much more if I have put myself, maybe not first, but like up there,
Yeah.
um,
Well, and that's something too, you're modeling this for your kids if they see it, right? If you haven't done this in the, in the closet, so to speak. But it is something that when it comes to coaching parents to coach their kids on college success, one of the things that we talk about is your kid needs an opportunity to do something fun, something for themselves, something that they enjoy. What is that 15-minute or that 5-minute thing they can do between studying? Because college is freaking hard. I don't care if you're valedictorian at your high school. You can be valedictorian at the best high school in the world, and college is still going to be a struggle. It's meant to be that way. It just is. So if they learn early to take some time for themselves, what is it that you can do for you that puts you in that moment to breathe? It might be walking the hallway. It could be, I need to go outside. I need fresh air. I need to see grass and trees, whatever it is. But find what it is. But it should not be for this particular purpose. It should not be checking email, getting on a video game, because those things, or being on social media. Why? Because these are time suckers.
Yeah.
Even though sometimes what you're reading or what you're doing is fun, it's still a time sucker. It's not something you can easily put 5 minutes or 15 minutes on, cut it off, and then get back to work. And that's the goal, is to do something for you that says, that was for me. And now I can get back to work and do things that I also need to do for me, but that might actually be a little more productive than having a cup of coffee or painting your nails, right?
Yeah. And, and it's great if your child has a hobby, to take that. Like for girls, it might be something like cross stitch or crochet. And for guys, maybe they have a sketchbook, or, for those adult coloring books are great. And there's some really funny ones that, that a guy might even like. They may not want to do butterflies, but, maybe they do. But yeah, just there's so many outlets that are kid. I just so encourage kids to have a hobby for just as a life skill. You just need to have a way, like you said, to just escape. And it does need to start, it probably needs to start in like middle school, because by the time you get to college, maybe you could pick from 2 or 3 things that you like, and then you've got it for the rest of your life. That's, that's something I had. I was not an artist ever. I mean, far from it, but I like paper scraps. And so I've always just kind of made things. And that was kind of what I would do in college, just to kill some time. People would bring me like their old birthday cards, and I would just, whatever, make stuff.
Well, you mentioned that. It's pretty funny you mentioned it, because my son, one of the things that he enjoyed doing early in his college career is he learned how to do origami paper folding stuff. So he would do
fold, but that's cool
stuff like that. So, you can have your own little menagerie on your desk as you're doing your homework. Or if your child enjoys music, maybe it's listening to 2 or 3 songs of their favorite artist, whatever it might be, right?
With a timer.
With a timer. It's just got to be something that you're not going to go, oh, just 1 more minute, because that 1 more minute is going to be 30 or an hour. It has to be something that you can actually cut off and not feel guilty about cutting it off, and then continue with what's important, with what has to happen, right?
Right. For your school success or job success or whatever it is.
Exactly. And this is true for all ages. And it would be beneficial for parents if you can institute this type of a thing in the middle school years, because high school, as we know it, has become more and more competitive, more and more difficult for most kids, and more challenging. And if they can learn these, I call it study skills, but it's really just taking care of yourself skills, right? If they can learn to do these while they're in high school, then they will automatically put them in place for college.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And it's so important for us to remember that we've had all of these years to accumulate our knowledge at base and our habits and everything. And they're still learning and figuring it out. And so that these are when I talk about like planned and scheduled and intentional conversations, those are some things that, you know, you not only need to talk about like goals and, you know, are we going to college or if not, what is the plan? Like all those kinds of things. But even little things like, you know, what are you going to do when you have 5 minutes? Like, so we need to remember that these are all things that we already know.
Mm-hmm.
And that, you know, each of the boys, I have a notebook. It's just a spiral notebook. And in the back, I would, if something would cross my mind, and I also had a list on my phone, like, oh, I should sometime in one of our conversations, I need to cover this. And even if it was just a quick sentence or two. And sometimes it would be a huge thing, like, what have you done to get a job for next summer? You know, whatever the case was. But, and then the front of the notebook was, you know, we would date it and like what went on in the conversation, and did somebody, you know, was there homework assigned? Like, do you need to make a phone call to a couple of prospective employers, or did you need to talk to a teacher about something? And then when we would come back together, the reason why I started keeping a notebook was, in the beginning, we didn't, because I was like, whatever. But then we would argue and we would spend all this time and they would say, no, we didn't talk about that. And I was like, you know, so I highly encourage you just to get a spiral notebook and put their name on. If they want to decorate it, great, whatever, but have it in a place where you can both add topics in the back that you want to talk about. Maybe they have a question, maybe they have a concern, or if you don't want them to have access to the notebook because maybe it could get lost, maybe they give you a Post-it and you can stick it in there yourself, you know, whatever works. But I do think when you are intentionally parenting, that they see that you take this job seriously, because it is a serious job, but also that you care about them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a piece that a lot of teenage parents are missing, that there is this care factor, that if the teens aren't seeing it or feeling it, I mean, they're not dumb. They know. And that, again, you're not going to have perfect days and you're going to have perfect kids. This doesn't eliminate any issue at all, but at least you're already in sync. You've hopefully are forming a bridge, or you have a bridge that you can work from. You know, maybe they're going to fall off, you know, a couple times, but you're there to pull them back up.
Being the parent that is engaged is really important. I can remember when my children were little and going to preschool, I remember a parent who the teacher had placed the child's coloring sheets or whatever the project was in his backpack. And he would come back on Monday morning and that backpack had not been opened. This was a parent that was it was babysitting, and the parent really didn't care what was going on. This was constant. It was obvious that there was no interaction there, that this, you know, was just a kid and here you go and just coming along and that was it. You don't want to parent in that way. You want to be the engaged parent that helps your child become an independent, productive young adult. And the only way to do that is to help them, well, basically to think, you know, help them to be able to make decisions. Critical thinking skills is really important. But these things don't come just out of the blue. They are taught or caught or both.
I've taught preschool for 9 years. And then the last 2 years I was in middle school, and now I'm in pre-K now. And it's funny that you say that, because the parents that pick up their kids and they're on their phone, this is my hugest pet peeve. Their children are so excited. They miss their mommies, their daddies, whoever it is that picking it. They're so excited. And then you can just watch their face just fall. And even in middle school, it was kind of amazing. You know, it was a tough bunch. I was in a tough school for a couple years, and you could tell who just craved my teacher love, what I had to give to them, because they weren't getting it anywhere else, you know, and it just breaks your heart. So if you can do anything else for your kids, just listen, just be there for them. They want you, so they don't even know how bad they want you. And here's what I have learned too, is we don't even know how bad they need us. We don't even know. So if we are trying at least a little bit, you are so far in the right direction.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. It really does. And I'm going to take a quick step back. It's not that we're bad parents. It's that we don't know, we don't realize what's going on in our children's minds, in their psyche, as far as how, if they see us constantly on the cell phone, well, that's what they think they have to do, is be on their cell phone all the time, right? And that's just a simple example, but they're going to mimic what you're doing. And if you think 20, 30 years down the road, is this how you want them to react, to behave, et cetera, as a parent to your grandchild? Because
Right.
we are paying this forward, like it or not.
Mhm.
And we don't think that we're bad parents. We don't realize what we're doing is being perceived negatively by our children because we're just busy. We all have a life. I get that, right? But you've got to make this time with your kids. I don't care if they're, like you said, middle school, all the way through college. Conversations need to be had. And it's better if you can start those earlier. But if you already have college students or high school students, start them now. Conversation is so important.
Exactly. It's never too late. And start small. Like if you think you're going to get pushback, or you think, I think you'll be surprised by the fact that maybe you will. Just depends on that relationship. But start small. Say, I just need 15 minutes. Let's do, what's your Sunday look like? And just say that. And I just want to talk, and just say, mostly I'm going to listen. I have like 2 questions, and like really think in your head, like, what do I have to, or need to know, or want to know the most? And set the timer so that they know that you're respecting their time. And you can always say, well, do you have 5 more minutes? Like, make it, help them to make that decision, and to see that you are really going to respect their time, and that you want this to work. And then just say, okay, that went great. So I really have a topic that I think we need to talk about: college. So like, could we meet? What's your Sunday 2 weeks from now look like? Could we maybe meet for 30 minutes? Because that's a little bit more, and like, play around with it. Like, it doesn't have to be like an all day thing.
Right.
And like with my sons, when they were younger, our middle son is very active, and sitting on a couch or whatever, that was not going to work with him. So we would go out, and as terrible as I was with basketball, I would be the rebounder. And so my husband and it was all one-on-one. I mean, we still did family meetings, but I think it's the one-on-one that is where it's at. And we would go out and we would talk, and time would fly. He wouldn't even know that we'd been out there for like 45 minutes, and it was time that he was enjoying with us, and we were getting what we needed from him, and he was loving it. So, and even into the high school years, sometimes he'd go, can we go play basketball? Again.
That's
So
awesome.
your kids better than anyone. And so take advantage of that information, go fishing, or there's so many activities that help a conversation go better, because you don't have to like look at each other. That's
True.
talk in the dark. There's just a million ways to connect with your kids, and it doesn't have to be like sitting on the couch looking at each other. Like they'll probably gag on that. Like, okay, mom,
Yeah,
I'm done,
exactly. Exactly. And one of the things that I found, and again, your children better than anyone else. I found that for my kids, and when I was homeschooling my kids, I also taught a homeschool class for high school math. What I found is that it was very quiet until I brought food out. If there were snacks on the table, they would talk. I mean, it was as if we had a party. There was only 5 kids, but it was definitely something that brought them together and allowed them to speak. And again, like you said, if they're reaching for M&Ms and putting in their mouth, they don't feel like they have to talk directly at someone and have eye contact with the person who's talking with them. It's a lot easier. And find what is it that interests your child. For my son, he loves to cook. So he'll call me once in a while and just tell me about a new recipe he's trying, or maybe he'll have a question about something that's cooking related, but it's a starting point for a conversation.
Yeah, it's funny that you mention food, because that's one of my big things is food. Like, make their favorite cookie. Like, yesterday was our last day off, all of us, before we headed back to work. And I had not made chocolate chip cookies like the entire break. I was trying, there was so much other food, but the boys were like, "Oh, you're going to make," and, and we just sat around in the kitchen, and oh my gosh, they were gone in an hour, but you know what? It was fun, and we all hung out. A good answer. And another way to, like, I call it bribery. Like, it is bribery. Like, if you, that first time and you're not sure, it's like, I was just thinking, what their favorite dinner is, like, have it just say, we're going to have such and such for dinner, but I really want to have this 15-minute talk with you first, or whatever. So yeah, food is key, girl or boy. The
Yeah,
teenagers, they love to eat.
that's true. That is true. Very much. Mel, this has been a fabulous conversation. You have some incredible resources for us. Can you tell us about it and how to reach you?
Yes. Okay. So first, I have a book. It's called College Bound: The Ultimate List of Conversations to Help Your Teen Through High School. So it's not every conversation, obviously, that you need to have, but it's 14 really important ones. And then once you get used to the idea of doing this, have more. I have a weekly newsletter. If you want to jump on there, there's a link to my Parenting High Schoolers High School Survival Kit.
I'll put it in the notes for sure.
Okay, so that's a great resource for parents to use wherever they are in high school. It'd be great in the beginning, but it's a way to keep track of everything. And really, the job is to get your kid to keep track of it, but it's a way for you to start together. And it's very organized, and then they can just kind of keep up with it. Oh, and I have a parenting course, just real briefly. It's 5 modules. None of them are more than like 10 minutes. It's like reconnecting with your teen. So if you're at a space, they're really easy to implement strategies.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Mel, we'll definitely have a couple of links in the description. So parents, make sure that you grab that after this conversation and connect with Mel and let her help you with your family relationships.
Thanks. One more thing. You're going to be in our summit. We have a summit.
I am. Yes, that's right.
We have an online parenting summit called Next Phase Parenting Summit, which is January 24th through the 27th, totally free. And I bet Denise will be putting it in her newsletter and everywhere else. So on Facebook, we would love to have you, any parent.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks again, Mel, for being with us. And parents, make sure you check those links at the bottom. And Mel, we'll be seeing you again soon.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me.